Let's see. There we go.
Where's Michelle? Where's Michelle?
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Feel free to say hello in the chat box. We're happy that you could join us for session 2. We're very excited. I feel like I've gotten a chance to get to know some of you a little better by reading your week 1 responses.
Yeah, it's been cool. I feel
Yeah,
like we're building a little community.
definitely. Before we, Monty, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just teasing.
Oh.
I work at a summer camp, so now it's sort of like, I think of summer camp, I'm like, well, okay, I guess it's song time or group activity time before we...
Oh, feel free to lead us out in a song, Monty.
I'm not prepared to lead us in song.
I'll make one up.
What's that?
I'll make one up. It's social innovation time. No, I won't.
We have to come up with a packful jingle.
Goodness.
The extra credit activity for this week.
Yeah, there we go. That would be something cool to have the students do. I know they can come up with some really creative songs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just throwing a random challenge for that. Who can come up with the best packful jingle? Well, before we get started, everyone, we wanted to allow just a few minutes to give you an opportunity. If you had any thoughts or any reflections based off of the information that we've covered thus far, and you would like to share it with everyone, feel free to do so. You could type it in the chat, or you could unmute yourself and share it with us, but we just wanted to give you an opportunity to do that.
Oh, got it. Just letting Natalie in.
Okay. I want to share.
I'll have we're talking at the same time. I was going to share a reflection on all of the posts and how fascinating it is. Number one, I love the enthusiasm that everybody has for engaging their students with social innovation. I feel like we're doing something really important and powerful. And then 2, it seemed like we were split, I don't know, maybe 50-50 on people that were going to focus on all the global goals versus going narrow with one goal. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say for me, just in thinking of in terms of what you were all experiencing with the coronavirus and this pandemic, I liked the fact, I can't remember which post it was, but one of the posts really pulled out that, you know, that students and, you know, even adults, we were just, you know, having a chat about it. Like, we all are experiencing emotional effects as a result of this, and having a sense of agency and knowing that you can contribute, you know, with solutions to help, even in a situation like this, helps you to reframe your mindset, you know, instead of just being like the passive, not say a victim, but in a way, but, you know, just having to just deal with it, but actually being able to be active in the process of, you know, how can I come up with solutions that can help not just myself or my family, but also the world. But I think that having the sense of agency, Packful really empowers students with those tools to do so. And so I thought that was a very powerful post. Okay, I see we have a couple of comments. Well, one comment actually. It says, so far it looks like a great opportunity to make learning visible and share collaborative opportunities. Absolutely. And we have some creative ideas about collaboration that we're going to share with you as we go on throughout the process. So we're excited about that. Didn't mean to go just yet. Okay, backtrack a little bit. All right, well, if anyone else wants to share, we'll give you a moment to do so. And if not, we'll keep it moving.
And you're welcome to unmute your mic if you want, or just type in chat, whatever works best for you.
We'll keep it moving. All right, well, today we are excited to continue talking about Packful and how you can launch your own teen innovation challenge. So today we're going to focus on understanding the 3 phases of design thinking that's addressed in Packful. And we're going to explore the steps in each phase, emphasizing the activities that your students can get involved in. So just a reminder, just a quick review, here are the Packful phases that culminates in the pitch. So you have understand, ideate, prototype, and it all leads to the opportunity for students to sell their solutions through their pitch. It's important to note here that educators who are sharing this, this curriculum with your students, you may find that it is easier for you to go in a linear order. And that's totally okay. It is up to you. But we just wanted to share with you that the software itself is designed so that students can navigate freely through the steps. So although you may be going in a linear order, they may still find the need to go back and revisit steps or jump to another step. So it does lend itself for that freedom. However, you as the teacher, feel free to do what is best for you and your students and in your classroom. We trust you completely. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the steps within each phase. I'm sure most of you at this point have been able to have been able to go into the software, but if not, I just wanted to give you an explanation in regards to how it is set up. So within the phases, you have 3 important steps: explore, doc, do, and doc. Students will navigate through these steps to help them to review helpful information and videos about the actual phases. And there are a variety of activities provided for the students that we'll be talking about today. So let's start with the understand phase. So just to recall, understand is the time when students can seek to discover and research more about the problem by gathering important facts, stories, and other details through interviews and observations. The understand phase is divided into 3 categories: research, empathy, and organization. So we're going to take a look at these activities. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in the chat so we can address them as we go throughout the presentation. All right, so let's take a look at some of these fun activities. So for understand research, we have 2 specific activities: dive into the research questions and uncover assumptions, personal assumptions charts. These activities allow students to have the option to create research questions. You know, some students have had exposure with creating research questions, others haven't. So we do provide a template, actually the one that you see on the screen, it's called the research portfolio. And in the research portfolio, it helps students to come up with questions that they can ask to their interviewees. It's a time where they can uncover any assumptions that they may have, identify what they already know about the problem itself, and then think about what they still want or need to know.
Can I make a comment on that slide, Alina?
Absolutely, I'll go back.
I just wanted to mention that the way the software is built, as you're working through each phase, so like when you're in the understand phase, if you notice up at the top, it says, as a team, select and complete 3 to 5 activities. That's because we've offered you maybe 10 to 12 activities to choose from. Sometimes we'll recommend specific activities or a number of activities, but it's just to give you the opportunity as the teacher to pick and choose particular ones that may work for your students more than others. These are activities that have been, either they're open source and used in industry by IDEO, which is famous for design thinking. They've come from Project Invent, or other places that are using design thinking activities and strategies. So I just wanted to give that context that even though there might be 8 or 10 activities, it doesn't mean your students have to do all of them.
Absolutely, and we last week we talked about the students having autonomy over their work, and so by having a variety of activities for them, the students, if you're comfortable, they can choose which activities that they want to do, you know, that they are drawn to themselves. So you could either, as the teacher, choose it for them, or you can allow them to choose the activities that they would like. Because as we know, when they have personal choice, they are definitely more likely to be engaged in the process. So continuing on under understand, the next set of activities are empathy questions. And empathy just allows you to gain a deeper understanding of the problem by walking in the person's shoes who's most affected by the problem itself. And so we have a few activities: create an interview script, conduct interviews, and conduct observations. And here, the student teams are allowed to walk through a process in which they can create a script to collect information from key people involved with the particular global goal. And so templates, just like in the research activities, templates have also been provided for students as well. And this is just so to help students not get lost in the process. They don't have to use the templates that we provide, but as a teacher, you may find them to be a helpful resource for you and your students. And these activities are very important because it guides students through the kinds of questions that they should ask and identify who they should ask. And overall, it helps students to build rapport. It helps them to remain objective and focus on watching and listening to others. And then the last area for the understand activities is organization. And this is so important. And I know many of you are thinking, like, yes, organization is so important, because it's not just teenagers who struggle with that, also adults too. And I'm sure we could all probably use some help with that at times. I know personally I can. And the activities that we have provided, there's the affinity clusters, empathy map, and journey map, in which students are able to analyze and highlight those key findings from the interviews and observations, whether it's noting their reflections on sticky notes, or on the digital pin boards like we did with Padlet. Students are able to identify what really stood out to them the most, and they can create data tables, a timeline of key events. These are all helpful ways that students can gain new insights and identify patterns related to their problem. And anytime we get an opportunity to showcase some of the student work that we've come across, we like to do so. So on the screen, you will notice that we actually have some affinity clusters that were created by students who participated in our Changemaker Challenge this past spring. And so they shared them on social media, and now we're sharing them with you. So it's always fun to see students in action.
I'm just curious if anybody on the call today has ever used any type of empathy work with your students yet. If you wouldn't mind sharing in any form, in interviews, and I'm just curious how prevalent that has been in your practice.
We have one response, no. Okay, so sporadically, but very basic, okay. So so you would find these activities to be quite helpful in guiding students through that process. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely very valuable. Okay, well, let's continue on. So we're going to take a look at some of the ideate activities. Now, if you recall, within this phase, students are able to, number one, state the problem, which is very important because they have to know exactly what kinds of solutions they are creating. So by clearly stating the problem at hand, it will be very helpful for them. And this is their opportunity to where they can create several original and unique ideas and then narrow it down to one. So we have some really, really fun activities within this phase. I mean, they're all fun, but I really like these. All right, so these activities are divided into the categories: frame the problem, go broad, and go narrow. The first one, frame the problem, takes students through an activity called How Might We? It's an opportunity where they can ask, they turn their problem into a how might we question. And so this is able to help them to place their research problem into perspective. And I'll give you an example of what that could sound like. How might we provide flood victims clean drinking water in order to prevent illness from unsanitary drinking water? And if you notice, that's a clear problem that students can create clear solutions to. And so ultimately, how students frame the question determines the kinds of solutions that they will come up with later. So next you have Go Broad activities. And this is a time when students can freely share all of their wonderful ideas with their peers. So in the activities Brain Dump, Brain Write, and Worst Possible Idea, that's my favorite, students can have some fun by coming up with wild and crazy solution ideas that answer their how might we question. They will come up with the best ideas and even the worst ideas. And I'm sure many of you are thinking about some of your students who would just take that and run with it. But coming up with the worst idea is actually a clever way to take the pressure off, number one, for students, and to analyze why some solutions just aren't feasible and in some cases logical. So this helps them, this particular activity helps them to turn some of those terrible ideas into great ideas. So they can have a lot of fun with that. So after they have come up with all of those wonderful ideas or some terrible ideas, they have to narrow it down to one. And so these next set of activities helps them there. So in sticker dot voting, four categories method and sanity check, students take all of their thoughtful ideas and then vote on the best one. So it could be through color coding or even charting them. But the activities helps them to consider which ideas are plausible, feasible, and innovative. And if you notice that a lot of these activities really lends itself towards teamwork and getting everyone on the same page. So that's how Pathful is set up, because that's such an important skill that students will take throughout the rest of their lives, is learning how to communicate and collaborate with others. All right, so then let's take a look at your next phase, which is prototype. And if we recall, prototype is the opportunity where students can create these amazing ideas. So they'll get all of the experiential feedback from others and cycle between designing, building, and testing to continually rework and improve their solutions so that it ultimately meets the needs of their users. And here we just wanted to add in that a solution could be a product or it could be a service. For example, they can actually come up with an object or some kind of invention that is helpful, some solution to a problem, or they can come up with a plan or an idea like a fundraiser or a campaign. So we welcome both. Okay. All right, so now, as I mentioned before about designing, building, and testing, these are the categories that the prototype phase activities cover. So let's take a look at Design It. In the activities 2D model and 3D model, students will create their ideas by either using a pen and paper, a word processing software, digital graphic software such as Adobe Photoshop or InDesign, to name a couple, or even photographs of their 2D models are acceptable. They can also use craft or office materials to construct or design their prototypes, or they can use design programs like Tinkercad, Tiltbrush, or Google Blocks for 3D models. And our challenge today, which we'll talk about a little later, will give you some experience to work in developing a 3D model. So next we have Build It. So in the Build It activity, students are able to build a working model. And so the activities are divided up into 3. We have prototyping to test, prototyping for empathy, and prototyping another idea. When building, students will have to keep in mind areas such as visuality, empathy, space, and technology. They'll even identify what features are most useful for users and compare their prototypes to other similar ideas out on the market. And then last but not least, we have Test It. So in the Test It activities, we have I like, I wish, what if, the feedback capture grid, and story, share, and capture. And basically, these activities help students to frame the tester's feedback in a constructive way. So they're getting all of this information, they're allowing people to test. And so what do you do with all of that information? Well, number 1, students will do objective recording in form of charts, grids, and sticky pads. And so then they will identify common threads or insights that they get from the actual feedback from their testers. And then they will use that information to translate it into actionable next steps to improve their projects. So ultimately, students will take that feedback, they will retweak it, rebuild their models until it performs to the best quality with the best user experience. And then that will all lead to the pitch. And as we spoke about last session, the pitch is the time where students can really sell their solution and convince their audience that their prototype can really make a difference in this world. It is the solution, well, their solution is the hero that can solve the problem. And so the pitch activities are divided into 2 categories: craft it and share it. So let's take a look at the crafted activities. These are an excellent way for students to shape their stories of their solution. And so we have the story arc, solution slogan, and solution name. These activities walk students through using various persuasive strategies, yay, including ethos, and I'm saying yay because I was an English teacher and I had to teach the writing cycles, and persuasive writing was one of them. And so we covered ethos, pathos, and logos. And it even gives students the opportunity to teach catchy slogans and names that best represent their solution. So I love when you have overlap between the subject areas, and design thinking is one of those processes that covers so many subject areas. So I always get excited. All right, so then continuing on, there are the crafted activities. And we have the competitor, matrix, and value proposition, as you can see on the screen. These allow students to visually shape the narrative of how their product is similar and different from other comparable solutions. Guidance on how to create these comparative grids or charts is given throughout the activities, and it's a really wonderful way to create a visual story. And then once they have completed all of that, it leads to sharing the actual story. It leads to their culminating pitch. So you have the activities, create your presentation, and then the pitch event itself. Now, tips and pointers are provided for the students to help them create their pitch slide deck. And the pitch slide deck is aligned to the pitch rubric, which you see on the screen. And all of that is in our curriculum online. And one thing that I found to be really awesome was that it includes the initial pitch decks for some of your leading companies like Square, Facebook, and Airbnb. And they're in there as guides or references. So students can actually see how some of these leading companies got started, and hopefully it will inspire them to know that, hey, maybe one day, you know, this slide deck can get turned into a big time company that solves problems for the masses out there. And so this is accessible for every student. So when they are finished working on their presentations, their slide decks, I should say, and practicing their pitches, then that will lead to the actual presentation. Now, I will state this, we will go further into what this will look like or what it can look like for you in our later sessions, but I did want to introduce the idea to you. And so the final pitch presentation could be in both a physical or a virtual setting. I think with the way that we are situated right now, virtual is probably the best, but I'll leave that up to you because everyone's situation is different. Students will showcase their innovative solutions to their peers following the rubric. And, but like I said, that could manifest itself in many ways, and we would love to hear your feedback on that, but we will definitely talk about that in the future sessions. So as I mentioned earlier, as we were talking about the prototype, we thought it would be fun for you to delve into some prototyping yourself. Now, I'm just curious if anyone on our webinar today has ever used the online software Tinkercad. If you have, just type in yes. If you have never dealt with it, type in no. Or if you've heard of it but haven't used it, let us know that too. I'm just curious. Okay, so we have so several no's. Okay, awesome. Well, this will be a learning experience for you, because this activity calls for you to, well, number one, the innovation challenge. Let me backtrack a little bit. We do want you to go into the software and review the activities. I just did a general overview, just a general scan of them, but we would like for you to go in and just take a look at what they look like. You can click on the activities, and information and videos are there for students. So it's not just the title of the activity, it actually has some background information for students. So just kind of peruse through the Packful curriculum activities to see what we have. And then in the Packful community, we want you to share just one or two that you really like or really stand out to you. And then secondly, leading up to the Tinkercad question, we have an activity for you. I want you to pretend for a little bit that you are a part of a committee in which you are selected to join the Clean Water and Sanitation Task Force to create solutions for people in the world who have limited access for clean water. So basically your goal is to create, and Tinkercad is a free prototyping program that you can use as with your students, just like most ed tech software that's available for teachers. You as a teacher create your class, and then you add in your students, and then you can monitor the work that they do. So it's a pretty awesome setup. And so what you're going to be doing this week is you're going to create a solution for this clean water issue that's happening. And then you're going to post your prototype that you create, and you're going to describe it to us and let us know basically how is it going to help with the access to clean water issue. And so don't be intimidated by it. We do have some thorough, detailed instructions and even some short videos. And I have to admit that in one of the videos, it will show you how to access a gallery of other previously created objects already. So you can actually take an object that has been created by someone else already and just tweak it if that's best for you. The whole purpose of this activity is not for it to drive you crazy or be too complex. We just want to get you familiar with Tinkercad, because many educators are in a virtual setting right now with their students, or will be for the fall. And so learning how to use some of this software will help you as you use Pactful. And so it's pretty fun to get some practice in now. And let's see. So anyway, I think that will be fun for you. And if you have any questions along the way, do not hesitate ever to contact any one of us, and we will be more than willing to help.
I just wanted to comment on a couple things, just for everyone's benefit. First of all, thank you so much for joining us for these sessions. This was sort of a quick, I think, breeze through of a number of the different phases that we see that we've leveraged in Pactful and that have been used in classrooms and the events throughout the past year or so. As you obviously don't need to like memorize them or anything like that. It's more of an introduction and an overview. If it's a little daunting or anything, it's still totally fine. Just remember that you can just go into Pactful and look at these things whenever you like. I will remind you though, in order to actually get to the activities, you will need to create a project. So create a project on your Pactful dashboard. And then in the context of that project, you can go in to any one of the 3 design thinking phases of the pitch phase, and then drill down in there to see all of the content that Alina talked about today, as well as the explore phase. For the explore step for each of the phases also has learning content. So if you want sort of a refresher, I would say each one of our phases, we have created a custom animation, which is about 1 to 2 minutes. It's no longer than that. That kind of does an initial overview of the phase and kind of introduces students and teachers to what the phase looks like, along with some additional readings. So all of that information is there, but just don't forget that you have to go ahead and create a test project and kind of walk through the steps, and then you can see all of that content.
Wonderful. Thank you, Monty. And I want to share this. Once you have created your prototype and you're ready to share it with everyone, if you can, try to get it done by Tuesday, but the latest Wednesday. But if you post it on, then that will give others an opportunity to make comments on your post. And like I said, don't feel too intimidated. Just do the best that you can. It's all in the name of fun.
And actually, that's a great point, because I think, and I've told Alina this, one of the first little projects that we did at the Jacobs Institute was we all had to use Tinkercad and create little things. And I remember setting out I'm like, oh, this will be great, and I'll create something that I thought was going to be relatively simple, which was to create a die, just a single die with divots, or pips actually, on each side. It took me a lot longer. I mean, I didn't have to finish it, but it took me actually a lot longer to make that work than I had anticipated, but I was quite proud and happy of the final piece I was able to create, because you can then take those 3D models and print them with a 3D printer, or bring them into other software and things like that, which can be really helpful, particularly with students who may wish to use a tool like that in order to then build objects or something like that for a 3D game or something like that. So there's a number of different ways that a piece of software like Tinkercad can be used in the context of their project or solution, but also frankly in your classrooms for other purposes too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing. Are there any questions or comments about anything that we talked about today?
Hi, this is Mary Beth, and I have a comment. So as I'm listening to you talk about this process, I'm realizing how similar it is really to the kind of project development process that I've done with kids with maybe a curriculum topic, where they might, with that kind of that KWL, what do you know, what do you want to learn, where you're developing a question, and then where you're presenting what you've learned. So this is kind of exciting to me that it's not as overwhelming as I thought it might be, because the way you're explaining it, it seems like it's a very familiar process, but applied to maybe bigger and more creative and relevant topics. So it's kind of just an exciting thing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
And actually, Mary Beth, thank you for that. I would add on, and I saw a couple comments in the community. Some thoughts around people. I think initial takes are that they might think that something like the UN Global Goals are these, you know, really huge things. And I think there's a lot of good feedback from others, and we certainly agree that. And we even say this in lots of our educational content. It's like, yes, the goal might be very large, you know, no hunger is like, that's a very lofty, you know, huge opportunity. But honestly, there are a lot of different ways, projects and solutions and things that student teams can do on the very local or in their community or in their house that give them the experience. They're still moving the process forward and learning in that area. It doesn't have to be these major, massive, you know, the things that they take on. They can start, and frankly probably should in some cases, start small and then iterate towards something bigger over time. And that's the whole, this process of design thinking is also very familiar to those of us in software development. There's a lot of iterative, you know, processes that are used in that way. There's a lot of different variations on the name, but that's exactly right, which is, you know, hopefully it's not overwhelming. It is meant to be sort of creative and engaging. Roll up your sleeves, do it, check it out, see how it feels, you know, repeat and do it some more. So appreciate all the comments from folks.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment regarding the targets underneath the global goals, like honing in on those. And if impactful in the Innovators Guide, where under the tab Global Goals, if you notice under each goal, there's resources that you can click that take you directly to the UN's website, and they have these, they have it, basically the global goals are broken down into targets. And so these are like subcategories underneath the overall. So if it's like no hunger, which is really big, very, very broad, but it's narrowed down into these individual targets. And so definitely I agree, by having the students review those, they can, you know, come up with solutions that are more so targeted for certain areas. So they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to solve, you know, hunger for the whole world. What do I do? But it narrows it down and makes it a lot more reachable for students. So that's a great point. Thank you for that.
And we've actually talked about at times, and ultimately, as you, you know, are using Packful and have, you know, feedback for us, we welcome it, whether it's on anything, as we've mentioned before. We've talked about whether we should potentially consider adding the sort of an official capability to align the project with one of the targets underneath each goal. And then I think for now we're sort of saying, no, that might be just a little too overwhelming. But that's definitely something that's sort of cogitating around in our ideas about ultimately how to make improvements and how to, you know, help students learn the process a little bit.
Wonderful. Are there any more questions or comments? Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
I was just reflecting while you were presenting. So we went through all 3 phases and the pitch phase today. That was something when we hosted our own challenge last spring, we separated each one of those into different webinar sessions to support teachers through each phase as it was actually happening in real time. And I was actually having the opposite reaction, like, oh, I hope nobody's feeling overwhelmed, like it's too much to take in all at once, because before we had broken it up as we were supporting in real time. And I did want to comment that one of the things we heard from a couple of people was that they felt like they learned the process in real time with their students, that it wasn't like they had to know it all up front. And as it played out over time, the curriculum, because it's there and the software supporting it, that the teachers were learning too, and it was a comfortable process. So I just wanted to share that in case anyone is having the opposite reaction of feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think that's something great to keep in mind for everyone who's participating in the camp in the future for launching your own Teen Innovation Challenge. That you may want to uh, pace it along the real time of with your students as they are actually going through the phases, or if you have a team of educators that you're working with and you want to, pass along the information or teach them that it is good to break it up. I know you are basically getting a crash course lesson, crammed into 4 sessions. But when you are actually working with your teachers or colleagues to launch your own challenge, that is definitely something to keep in mind. Awesome. Okay, we have some feedback. So someone said Mary Beth said that she appreciates the process overview because it helped her get a sense of the big picture. So thank you for that feedback.
And on that note, actually, one of the things, I think we may have talked about this last time, but we found that it was also very helpful, and it is included in the teacher's guide. We actually found that doing a primer activity with participants, and if you're in the model of you're going to create your own challenge and you have other teachers you may be doing PD with or something, it may be beneficial for you to do a small primer activity with them too, which is kind of go through the whole process, the whole design thinking process in an hour. It's going to be obviously a bridge, but it does give you a sense of the full picture of what it can look like. And I think that can be helpful for both, teachers who are going to teach it and also for students who are going to go through it, so they get a little bit of a grounding before they then pick their global goal and their bigger challenge, which may take them, a few months or a semester or something like that. So just lots of different ideas, things that we have learned and you may want to consider.
Definitely, and we can talk more about that next week when we get into our challenge blueprint. I know one of the areas is educator support and training, and so we can definitely speak and talk about some examples of what that could look like for everyone. We don't want to get overwhelmed today, but we will talk about it in detail for you in the future. All right.
Can I share what I made in Tinkercad?
Yes, please.
So one of the things I encourage all of our staff to do is engage with emerging technologies. So we're all aware of what they do. And so when I went in Tinkercad, I drew my initials. This is LD. Let's see if I can get there. And I added this little connector, and I just made it for my keychain. So it's my initials on a keychain. And then we printed these on a 3D printer. I think for me, the power of understanding how to put your conceptual thought or to move it from 2D to 3D is an extremely important skill set, regardless of whether you're a social innovator or whatever type of career a student might go into. And I have seen students, many students we worked with in camp, where they've produced files, as Monty mentioned, in 2D, translated them to 3D, took that 3D file, printed it, took that file and brought it into a game and wire animated it and made it come alive like a little robot or whatever. And so it's these types of future-based skill sets that we're just trying to introduce to you so you can hopefully pass them along to your students. And Tinkercad is 3D modeling software designed for young children. So if they can do it, we can do it.
Absolutely. And so I'm just thinking about teachers who will be teaching in a virtual setting for this fall.
Right.
Say that they do say, hey, I want to do this Tinkercad activity with my students virtually because number one, it's free and it's accessible. We always try to share free resources with you. I think what came out in our Changemaker Challenge was that there are online companies that can take the prototype that's built in Tinkercad, and they could actually order it online and have it mailed to their house. Elisa, do you know of a specific? I remember Stephen Cerruti mentioned one of like a couple of companies who can do that online, but if not offhand, we'll find it for you.
One of the popular websites for sharing 3D files. So typically, like if a student makes a 3D rendering or drawing or object, they upload it and they share them on Shapeways. That's one place. And then Shape, and then you can download other people's files and you can tweak files. And I think Shapeways does printing, but Google Poly, Google's actually come out with a library of shareable 3D objects. And these are super cool because you can actually turn them and look at them in 3D on your screen, but they can also be brought into virtual reality. So, or mixed reality, or for really advanced technology building, game design, things like that. So check out Google Poly. Just
Google
take a peek on what's going on there. Yeah, they won't print for you for a price, but it has that same. It's a library of 3D objects that you can make for yourself. You can borrow from others. You can heart them, that kind of thing. It's sharing files.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, because I know some teachers have 3D printers in their classroom, but if the students aren't there, what are some other ways to make it happen for them? Or some teachers may not have access to 3D printers at all. And so students can still get the end product if they want.
Hey, Alina, Mary Beth had a question that she sent me privately about related to getting into Tinkercad, and I'm actually having a little trouble too. I was able to enter the class code, but then it asked for my nickname. Did you load everybody in there?
Yes, everyone has a nickname. I have an example in the
I saw that. That's why I can't get in. And then Mary Beth, I don't know if you got to that place where it asked you for the nickname. It sounds like you ended up on the dashboard. So I'm wondering if you had an existing Tinkercad account, perhaps. We could probably troubleshoot offline on how.
It wasn't me. It wasn't Mary Beth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
By someone else.
I apologize. Oh, yes. L. Myers, and I should know the first name when I, but.
Is that Lawrence? I'm trying to think of who's in the class.
I know, I'm bad with that. You know, I'm starting to learn people's names, but
Yes, but feel free to email us. But yes, everyone does have IDs that have been created. There's only one student who, there's actually there are two Deborahs, two Deborah R's. And so I did have to tweak one of the Deborahs, but I'm going to send her an email privately about it with her ID. But everyone else, if you follow the directions, it should work flawlessly.
Okay.
Should. Now, Monty, I don't think I created one for you. So.
That's totally fine.
I can. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions.
It is Lawrence, you're correct.
Oh, okay.
I can follow up separately.
Can I do my usual end of session question and just ask what's your one big takeaway from today?
Of
If
course.
people wouldn't mind sharing.
Yes.
Any new takeaways, thoughts, questions, one thing that stood out? We have tools. Yes, we have tools. Yeah, we always think of online learning as Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, synchronous, and your learning management system. There's so many cool tools out there, and Tinkercad's awesome because it overlays with real life and 3D printing, and you can bring your thing to life, you know? Direct access to the slides, those are in the community. Isn't that right, Monty? And then week 2, you post them? That's
correct. The same, so each week has its own category, and at the top of that category would be a sticky thread with all the information for including the educational topics and the weekly challenge activity. And then once we get finished here and can process it, I will link in that same post, I will add the link to both the slides and the recording. Obviously, you guys were here, but other people were not. So it'll be posted later today.
Week 2, Packful Community. Thank
Correct.
you. And Catherine said it seems really robust. I had that same reaction. Like, wow, I'm really proud of everything we've done. It feels very robust. Thank you.
Oh, let me see Michelle's comment about sharing Tinkercad with the tech teachers. Awesome.
Great, Dion. Yeah, it's almost unavoidable that the learning becomes personalized when they're working on solutions to topics they're picking, you know, or problems they're focusing on.
Okay. Well, if there are no more comments or questions, we can wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and attention. We
Thank you,
appreciate
everybody.
the work that you've done thus far, and I cannot, well, I know we all can't wait to see what you come up with in Tinkercad. I'm excited.
Thank you for presenting today, Alina. It was a great presentation.
You're more than welcome. Take care.
Bye, everybody.